All right, we get it rolling on the Krug Show on a Sunday night. John Lund in the house on the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show, brought to you by Damon and Mary, the owners of Pig and a Pickle. Check them out. 2 locations. They're open 7 days a week in Corte Madera. They're open Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. We're talking Niners today on a Friday. Warriors get a nice win over the Kings. Giants get a nice win. The Bay Area's buzzing with Warriors Kings right now, but the draft approaching Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and John Lund does a lot of stuff, of course, on KMBR and in and around Niner football, so he is with us to break down a little bit of what's going on in Ninerland. Johnny, good to see you, man.
Bro,
it's been a while, man.
How are you? How are you?
Good. I'm doing great.
Man. Oh, can't wait. Yeah, amongst all the things that are going on, and I know everybody's buzzing, but you and I have always had this connection when it came to the draft, and we did many shows together and spent many hours at Niners HQ right next to the room to where everything happens. And so, yeah, me and you are big on this. Now, look, I don't know the 6th and 7th and undrafted like you do. No one does. No one should. No one does. But it's awesome, man, because this is the time of year. You know, we love this stuff. You and I, we're dorks for it.
Oh my God, it's incredible. And you know, the Niners it's always juicy. And this year it may be, you know, the Niners have a bunch of picks. They got 11 picks, 3 in the 3rd round. I think they got 3 in the 5th round. They got 4 in the 7th round. And there's also rumors about Trey Lance. There's rumors about Brandon Aiyuk. I think people have speculated that, you know, somebody could move on Ambry Thomas or Javon Kinlaw. You never know. Is Robbie Gould coming back? Is that door shut? There's just a lot of little subplots around this team that are going to make the entire draft weekend really, really interesting. All right, where do we start? Why don't we start with the quarterbacks for a second? Because I saw a thing that I wanted to ask you about. They had the list of the S2 scores, and you know, everybody went Wonderlic forever, right? And then now they're going with the S2. And I guess Brock Purdy, right? Yeah. What's that?
Because of Brock Purdy, right? I mean, that's it.
Is that why?
And basically said, well, look why Brock is so good, because, you know, he can digest it and spit it out, and he can, you know, he gets through his reads really fast. And so they're looking for those guys, and all of a sudden he's at the top of it. And I can't remember who wrote the piece, but there was a big piece, and now it's kind of flipped, and that's what they're going with now.
Well, exactly. This is like the new measuring stick for processing. So Bryce Young, you know, supposedly Brock did really well, and from what I heard, Trey did really well on the test as well. For the upcoming draft, Bryce Young, 98th percentile. Jake Hayner, 96th percentile. Will Levis, 93rd percentile. Jared Hall, 93rd. Clayton Tune, 84th. Anthony Richardson, 79th. Hendon Hooker, 46th. C.J. Stroud, 18th. And to me, that was like, whoa, 18th. Now I'm hearing that the Texans, who have the 2nd pick, may not go quarterback, that they may go with Will Anderson out of Alabama.
I would.
I mean, it's hard to say. Do you go for the rock-solid defender, or do you try for a quarterback? But that always brings up the question about Trey Lance. Like, you know, is it possible Houston, John, could go, you know, defense with the, you know, they got the 2 number ones and still wind up making a deal for a guy like Lance? What do you think?
I think that Trey Lance is going to get traded before the end of the draft. It makes way too much sense. If you look at this whole thing, they reading the tea leaves, and you know this. So you look at Jake Hayner, like you said, 98th percentile. He's at that pro day. You look at their flirtation with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who they've met with, on 3 different occasions. Those guys are both, to me, and obviously jump in here, those guys are both, to me, more ready to play than Trey Lance. So people are saying, well, what do? Well, if you draft Dorian Thompson-Robinson, say, with one of those 5th-round picks, maybe he's going to be around. I think they're going to move around. They're not going to take 11 picks. And he becomes your 3rd-string quarterback or whatever, then and they like Sam Darnold for some reason. So all of a sudden, you've got a 3rd-string quarterback, and you have a guy that's probably more ready to play than Trey Lance. Plus, look, you know this. They're in win-now mode. They're in Super Bowl mode. When is Trey Lance going to develop? And if you look at, you know, where he would be ranked, I'd love your opinion on this. Where would he be ranked in this class? After Bryce Young? But would he be after Anthony Richardson? I mean, he was Anthony Richardson. He had that developmental things to do. Probably behind C.J. Stroud, even though he didn't do great on that test. I think he'd probably be the 3rd or 4th quarterback. So let's say that you are the Texans sitting there saying, okay, I'm going to take Will Anderson at number 2. You're not getting number 12 from him. but you're not going to make 11 picks. So let's say you package a couple of threes, you move into the second round. They have real needs. They need a right tackle. They need an edge opposite Bosa. It's not like this team is, well, it's just we're looking for backup guys. So I think the 49ers want to move up. I think that it's the perfect time. I think it's time for Trey Lance. He's not going to develop here. He's not going to get any better in terms of his value. I think that there are teams looking at Trey Lance going, okay, I'll give you a 2. And at this point, what do good teams do, Krug? They don't compound their mistakes. They move on. And I think that Brock Purdy is obviously coming along. For some reason, they like Sam Darnold. You take Dorian Thompson-Robinson, something like that. You got your 3 quarterbacks. And where's Trey Lance? I think that they want to get a pick for Trey Lance. I think they want to move up either into the high second or late first round, and they want to get a right tackle. They want to get an edge guy. They want to get a tight end. There's real needs on this team.
Yeah, no, Johnny. I mean, you're so spot on. I mean, I don't. You said there's so many things that you brought up there that we could go in so many different directions. It's hard to choose one here, but as far as Lance, I like Lance a lot as a prospect. I think in this draft, if you say where would he fit, I like Bryce Young as far as his processing ability, but he is so small. And I do think Anthony Richardson is really special, like 6'4", 244, and just crazy speed and athleticism. He's like a great running back or a great wide receiver who just happens to play quarterback. He's super athletic. So I'm intrigued by those two guys. Stroud, not as much, even though he had a great career at Ohio State. Levis has got a huge arm, but I watched Kentucky. They were bad. Hooker, I just don't see doing anything outside the numbers. Between the numbers, I like the way his ball comes out, but he also had 2 of the college football's best receivers this year, and how much of it was them and how much of it was him, how much of it was a quarterback-friendly offense. So I think for me, I would say I'd put Lance third. Let's say you go Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, whatever you like there. As far as I think Young's more ready to play, Richardson's got the higher upside. I think those guys would be 1, 2, then Lance, then Stroud and Levis and Hooker. But to me, the more intriguing thing is look how deep this quarterback class is. Hayner came in, as you mentioned, for the pro day. DTR, very experienced player. Jaron Hall's really an exciting athlete. Clayton Tune, I think, I think he might be the best option of all of the quarterbacks in this draft. There's just a lot of different options here, and I do think they're going to draft one. But I guess I got to go back to, in your mind, John, because you're sitting next to Greg. Greg's obviously sourced, and I'm not asking for you to speak for Greg, and John's not here to be Greg's mouthpiece at all. But I mean, what have you guys discussed on your show? What have you discussed privately? What has happened to Trey Lance in the eyes of the 49ers? Or has nothing happened and it's just Brock Purdy's ascension and there can only be, one truly number one guy?
I think they feel really good about his recovery and where he is right now, so they feel comfortable. Greg and I are on completely different pages as far as Sam Darnold. I don't see it. He thinks he really likes Sam Darnold. He played well for him down the stretch. I don't see it, but it's not for me to decide. The 49ers really like Sam Darnold, like it or not. So I would think maybe even Darnold is ahead of Trey Lance. And it's, it's on my part, it's nothing against Trey Lance. It's just I don't see an avenue for him to play. And for everybody who keeps screaming and yelling, we haven't even seen him. We saw him in a rainstorm in Chicago and for a quarter against Seattle. They've seen him. You know this, Krug. You're a former scout. They've seen him. They've seen every practice. They've seen combo practices against other teams where he struggled. They like a lot of things about Trey Lance. It's nothing against Trey Lance. But at some point, you look at it and it's clogged up. There's just no avenue for him to play. They like Darnold. They like some of these quarterbacks coming out, the guys that we mentioned. They love Brock Purdy, and he's coming along well. So there's not really an avenue. So if that's the case, everyone's got to forget about how many picks they gave up and where he was drafted and all these kind of things. The goal is to win a championship, and they don't trust him on the field. It's not on me. I'm just telling you, they don't trust him out on the field. They don't want to go through the experiment again that they did last year. They were willing to do it. They aren't willing to do it again. And so it makes a ton of sense to say, get what you can, move on. You have your quarterback room. You combo up a couple of thirds, maybe get in the late first and get your right tackle or get your speed edge opposite Nick Bosa, whatever. A guy, and it does mirror, and you and I have talked about this personally, it mirrors James Wiseman. Maybe 2 or 3 years from now, you're going to regret that trade. I get it. But they're hoping to have a Super Bowl trophy to hold up and say, hey, we get it. Trey Lance is really good, but you see this Super Bowl trophy? I'd even use the word desperate. They are desperate to win a Super Bowl. You know these guys, you've been around them a ton. They're in the window. They felt they should have won it last year and may have without the Brock Purdy injury. We know all those kind of things. They feel they're extremely close. So developing Trey Lance is not road A. It's like D, B, C. They want to win. And if you can bring in an edge or a right tackle, somebody like that at the expense of Trey, it may burn you in 2 or 3 years, but they hope to win a Super Bowl in the meantime.
Yeah, that is so well said. If you ask me what has happened with Trey Lance, why have they changed their thoughts on Trey Lance? They haven't changed their thoughts on Trey Lance. It's just that it's clear to them now that his timeline and their timeline don't fit. I agree with you wholeheartedly. They've been close, but that's only added to this incredible urgency that Jed, John, Adam Peters, Kyle, the players have. This organization feels like they need to have been there by now and gotten this done. They are desperate to get it done, and I think it's really just about that. What's it about? It's about their timeline is about now. They view Brock as more of a now prospect and Trey as more of a long-term guy. I think they see what I see. I think long-term Trey's a very, very great quarterback prospect, but I don't think it's going to happen this year, and I don't know if it's going to happen for a year and a half. It might take 2 years. It could take 3, and by that point, Trent Williams is retired, and Kittle's done, and Bosa's done, and the whole thing, it just doesn't jive on their timeline. So what is he worth? Because this is where we really get into some weird debates. It's like I predicted they were going to trade him. People just brought the wrath of God against me, just so pissed off that I would say that. And then I said, and I think they're going to trade him to Tennessee, and I was suggesting that they would get Tennessee's first-round pick. I don't know if that's possible. Then I'm looking at the Bleacher Report, prognosticators and the articles, and they're like, Trey for a 4th and a 5th. And I'm like, there's no chance in hell they're moving this player for a 4th and a 5th.
No, you know what they do nowadays? It's going to be it's the same thing that's holding up the Aaron Rodgers deal. So what happens is you get your initial whatever you get. And I think they'd have to package 1 or 2 threes, unfortunately, and he's coming off an injury, remember that, and you could get maybe into the late first round or something along those lines. Or Houston, for example, you're not getting pick 2, you're not getting pick 12, but they have 33, they have 65, they have 73. I mean, you could get in some sort of range. You might be able to get 33, but you may have to package some things. Again, you got to forget about what it cost you to get Trey Lance. He's not worth those picks anymore. Don't compound the problem. It's just that's the kind of thing you're going to have to do. And you hit it right on the head. It's somebody who knows Trey the person. So in Houston, they know him. In Tennessee, they know him. In some of these places, they know him. Then it also goes down to who has a high grade on Trey Lance and who are those teams who can't get up that far. The Commanders cannot get up that far. Tampa cannot get up that far at 19. They're not going with Kyle Trask. Come on. What happens with Baltimore if Lamar Jackson goes somewhere else? That's a team sitting at 22. You start looking at the end of the round, those kind of things, or top of the second round. What if the Colts shock everybody and at 4, they don't pick a quarterback at 4, they pick something else. Now they're sitting at 35. If we're sitting there and the Colts don't pick a quarterback at 4, then that means maybe that's the Niners trade and they get 35. Maybe they package a 3rd and Trey and get to 35. So, look, there's a lot of scenarios, but I'm with you. I think it's time, and they have not soured on Trey. That's not what it is. They're looking at a championship window, as you and I both know, that's 3 to 5 years maybe is what you get in one of these windows, especially in football. Guys get hurt, guys get old, whatever the case. They know they're dead right in the middle of it. And they want somebody right now, and they have open spots. Again, like we said, right tackle, edge, all these different places, and they don't have a bunch of money. They splurged for Hargrave. That's it. That's all they got. They're not going to do it again, and so they've got to go out and they got to utilize what they have. And Trey Lance might be a 3rd-string quarterback because they like Darnold. Well, you're going to move that guy to get what you can get, and I think the time is right.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I would say if you're a Niner fan and you think you can sit out this year's draft and not watch the coverage, you're wrong. Because from the 10th pick on Thursday night, you ought to stay by your set because, as John just kind of alluded to there, I mean, from 10 on, it gets really interesting. You got the Titans at 11. Are they going to go quarterback? You got the Texans at 12, especially if they go defense early. Are they going to go quarterback? What's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets? They go at 13. Is Rodgers there? Is he only there for 1 year? Is Mac Jones and New England going to stay together, or are they departing or parting ways? They're at 14. You got Washington at 16. They need a quarterback. You got Tampa at 19. They need a quarterback. Seattle's going to get a quarterback in this draft. They're at 20. The Ravens have the deal with Lamar, but they may get a quarterback. They're at 22, and the Vikings are at 23. So, and not to mention, let's get into the next part of this. If there was a team late first or early second that the Niners were trading up with, using Trey as the bait, who do you think, or what position are they going up for? The three guys I speculated on, John, are Michael Mayer, the incredible tight end from Notre Dame, who I just think is one of the safest. Call him Baby Gronk. I think with Kittle coming up, I think I could see them in the 2 tight end set this year, just being epic with Purdy. I think Mayer is one of the safest picks in the whole draft. I think he's that special. There's him. Then there's Isaiah Foskey, who went to De La Salle, who's from Antioch, who went to their local pro day, despite the fact they picked 99, and he's projected to go in the 20s. I thought that was really interesting. So Foskey's another one. And then, if they're building just the best defensive line they can, I think the player that is just so freaking special in this draft is Kalijah Cansey. And I don't know if NFL people know where he's going to wind up, but the mock draft that I'm looking at right now has Kalijah Cansey going where do they have him here?
Late teens, early 20s. What it seems, right?
They have a Tankathon has them going 29. And to me, this guy is just so freaking special. If you could add Kalijah Cansey to Armstead and Hargrave and, obviously Bosa and, to me, that could be the pick right there. To me, it's one of those 3 guys on the trade up. But how do you see it? A lot of people are thinking it's going to be a tackle.
Well, I think with Hargrave, I think they'd go outside. They need an edge minus or opposite Nick Bosa. I mean, that was you and I were together at the Super Bowl. I mean, that's what it is. Is they need, and now they need a right tackle, but they also need a guy opposite Bosa because D Ford never panned out. And what you need opposite Bosa in this wide 9 is you need a speed guy. So, Will McDonald, who's a guy out of Iowa State, is a real speed guy. Like I'm thinking speed guys. They're not going to, I don't think they're going to go another 265, 270 pound guy. They got enough edge setters. They got enough guys. Maybe his rookie year, someone would come in and just be that guy to go off the edge. And this is a deep, this better than I do. This is, as you mentioned, Foskey. There's a ton of guys who fly off the edge. And that
Derek Hall. Yeah, there's a lot of good ones.
I mean, there's a ton of them. So I really think that what they're potentially going to be looking at is your outside linebacker types. Let me just pull them up. You're not getting Will Anderson. I mean, Nolan Smith would be just the guy at 4.38 opposite him. I think he would be a huge one. But there is a boatload of guys who can fly off the edge. And then, like you said, will they have an opportunity to, get after some sort of a right tackle? A lot of people are saying Blake Freeland. I don't think he can play right away. If you're getting up into the high second round, you're hoping to get a guy who can replace McGlinchey right away. So, obviously Broderick Jones probably gone, Paris Johnson kind of gone, but now you're looking at guys like Darrell Wright and Anton Harrison and the huge guy out of Ohio State, DeJuan Jones or Cody Mock. I don't know if they'd want to go back to North Dakota State, but the reality is they've got to find a right tackle because how did Brock Purdy get hurt? Their right tackle missed a block. Well, their tight end missed a block, but the right side of their offensive line got crushed. And, you got Trent Williams on one side. What you'd really like to do is you'd like to get a right tackle who could eventually take over at left tackle because what does Trent have? A couple, 2-3 more years left. Get a guy who can play right, flip over to left, potentially down the line. And that's somebody that I would look at. Mock's a guy that a lot of people like, maybe moves to the inside. Again, you can tell me more about these guys. Jones is almost like Trent Brown was when he was with the Niners, just a massive dude. So, if they get lucky and somebody slides, I think they could go tackle. I know they want edge. And you pointed out the Notre Dame tight end, and this is a deep tight end class. They really, really want a tight end. And we know why. I mean, remember a couple of years ago, Reed, the guy that used to play with then the Redskins in Washington,
Jordan Reed, yep.
Jordan Reed. Kyle Shanahan wants an offense where, you think he has all these enough weapons, but he doesn't. he wants to add a tight end to this, and they've given Dwelly enough time, and they've given Warner enough time, and these guys haven't done it. They want to give Kittle more time off. He obviously he gets banged up, and not a starter. They want 2 tight ends. They want a guy who can move. They want a guy who can catch the ball, who can combo like Kittle does. And this guy's not going to be Kittle. But the point is he wants to throw so many different looks at a defense where it's like, oh, damn, now they're going to, in a 2 tight end set, what are they going to do? And a lot of times he's going to run it, but then that way it doesn't show anything away. When Warner's in the game, you're going to run it more. I mean, that's just he's a blocking tight end. When Dwelly's in the game, you're going to throw it. He can't block. So he's got to get a guy that can do both so it doesn't give away what he's doing offensively. He's wanted to add that for Krug. How long? Long time.
Yeah, and also I think they want to position themselves better in their negotiations with Kittle. And if they have one star tight end and then everybody else at his position's like a borderline guy who's not even can make the roster, those guys are like 3 or 4 tight ends. They don't really have a true number 2, let alone a second number 1. Michael Mayer would be my choice. I think Mayer's incredible, but there's a lot of good ones. Kincaid, Laporta, Tucker Kraft. To me, I think the wide receiver from Stanford, Elijah Higgins, who's like 240. To me, I'd make him a tight end. I mean, flex him out. Get him in the late rounds. I think that would make sense. But Dak Allen is a quarterback from Eastern Kentucky who they converted from to a tight end, and they're saying maybe a late round guy that could be a sleeper. So I could definitely see them going tight end. How about the interesting move I thought going into the draft was the signing of Conley, the receiver who used to run 4.3 and had 45-inch vertical, and then they're still looking at Jaden Reed, and they're still looking at Jonathan Mingo, and they're still connected to a number of receivers, and they already have Debo and Aiyuk and Jawan Jennings and Danny Gray and Ray McLeod. They got Tay Martin. They've got they only typically are going to keep 5, maybe 6, and they've now got 7, and they're looking at draft prospects. It makes you wonder if they're not. They've stated they are going to pick up the 5th-year option on Brandon Aiyuk. But is it possible that's just something they're saying because is it possible this is the draft weekend they deal him? The reason I mention that is because the New York Giants pick at the end of the first round. There's been a lot of speculation about the Giants wanting Aiyuk. I could see the Giants saying, you know what, Brandon Ayuk's better than any receiver on the board, and we need to be good this year. We'll give up our 25th pick in the round 1 for Brandon Aiyuk. And I could see the Niners doing that and replacing him, later on in the draft. What do you think, John? What are you hearing on Aiyuk? You think they're going to pick up the option he's here, or do you think he's too rich for their blood and it's $14 million plus to pick up the option?
Well, and the problem is too is you're trying to balance your roster out, and we know this about Kyle Shanahan. Look, this guy has been awesome, right? I mean, he's really developed into a great receiver, but Kyle isn't going to do that. I mean, they're going to invest in their defense, their defensive line, their offensive line, their trenches, all these kind of things. And anything outside that, Debo's a tough guy. I love Brandon Aiyuk. I would hope they learn their lesson from, hey, let's get really cute and we'll trade Buckner to the Colts, DeForest Buckner to the Colts, and then we'll replace him with this other guy, and it'll be like it didn't even happen. Well, guess what? That didn't work because Javon Kinlaw hasn't developed. And by the way, he's never going to develop because he's got chronic knee issues. And he's never going to be that player. So, again, let's accept that he's going to be a rotational player. That's why they gave Hargrave all that money. So that didn't work. So they could do it again and say, okay, we developed Brandon Aiyuk, but we can't pay him. We'll just get another receiver. And you know this better than I do because you've been studying this stuff. This isn't the year to do that. This isn't a great receiver class. I mean, to be honest with you, I like Zay Flowers a little bit, but, Jordan Addison's running in the 4.5s. I like Mingo. He's not bad. Like you said, Jalen Hyatt's a real speed guy. After that, it pretty much drops off. I mean, Josh Downs is a guy you could get out of the slot. I think they'll go a long way. I mean, I get to Parker Washington. He could be out of the slot. But, I mean, this isn't a great receiver class. So if you're saying Aiyuk is not worth it, does it then now Jennings is your second receiver? I mean, I know you got a lot of guys and you can put McCaffrey in the slot and all these kind of things. Or maybe you think that Danny Gray is all of a sudden going to make a big jump in his second year. But I think Ayuk's a really good player. You're in a championship window. I don't think you can mess around with that. I know there's a lot of buzz around it, and John Lynch is going to speak tomorrow at noon, and I'm sure he's going to get that question. But, man, didn't you learn your lesson the first time when you tried to play this shell game because you couldn't pay a guy? I would think that'd be a poor move. I think it'd especially be a poor move with this draft coming up, unless, like you said, unless a Conley can step forward or somebody gets released after the draft or something along those lines. Because if you release Aiyuk, I think your receiver core is really hurting because Debo is a great all-around player. He's not a great receiver. Aiyuk is actually the best receiver on your roster.
Yeah, and I'd be worried about, can Aiyuk stay healthy? I mean, can Debo stay healthy?
Right.
Because then there would be so much pressure on Debo to stay healthy. But there are some guys, they're looking at guys like Jonathan Mingo and Jaden Reed. These guys, might be able to step in and replace a guy like Aiyuk, and they would be far cheaper. But yeah, it would be a risk. It would be the same kind of risk they took with Buckner and Kinlaw. And I don't know that, I think it's most Niner fans would say that did not work out. If they go if they do trade Trey Lance, it's funny. I've been getting a lot of this too. They shouldn't trade Trey Lance. They're not going to trade Trey Lance. And then people will say, but you know what they really should do? They really should get Dorian Thompson-Robinson. It's like, hey, wait a second. Do you guys understand? There can only be 3 quarterbacks on the roster. Nobody ever has 4. So there will be no 4th quarterback. If they draft DTR, that tells you one of 2 things. Or if they draft any quarterback, especially anywhere high in the draft, that either tells you that Trey's going to be dealt or is already been dealt by the time this pick's made, or Brock Purdy's injury is very, very serious and he's not going to play this year. Because otherwise, there's no way you would draft fill-in-the-blank quarterback in the 3rd round. And then what? You're going to squeeze them through waivers at the end of camp, and nobody's going to pick up DTR, and you're going to slide them onto the practice squad. It's just not going to happen. They wouldn't even attempt it because they know better. So, that you can't have, basically people just want more the merrier because they used 4 quarterbacks last year. But, John, that's not really the way it works. But which quarterback, they do move Lance, think they will move him and bring another quarterback back? If you moved with the Texans, you could take back Davis Mills. If you made a move with the Titans, you could bring back Malik Willis. He's off a bad year. But if you dealt with the Jets, you could bring back Zach Wilson. Does Shanahan like Zach Wilson? Zach Wilson needs a change of scenery. There's no question. What do you think? Do you think would you rather go with those kinds of guys, or is there a quarterback in this draft that you like? And do you think the DTR thing's a smokescreen? They met with him 3 times.
No, I think they like both Jake Haener and DTR, and we've had Jake on our show a few different times.
Have you?
The kid is really smart. He's really cool to talk to. He really knows his stuff. I don't know if you saw him on the board with Mooch. He can draw it up. I know he hates the comparisons. We talked to him for the first time at the Super Bowl in Phoenix, and he hates the comparison with Brock Purdy, but they have a lot of similar things that they do. they're not exactly the same, but in terms of the way that they view the game. And look, I don't know. This is nothing against Trey Lance, but RG3, I understand that, but Kyle had to develop that whole offense for him. If you look at Kyle's history, he likes drop back quarterbacks. That's just the way it goes. Now, if you do want an option like that, then DTR gives you that. But I'll go back to something we talked about before. Both of these guys are older than Trey Lance. Both of these guys have about 4 or 5 times more passes in college than Trey Lance. They're both right when they come in, and they'll learn the offense quickly. It's not that, again, Trey knows the offense now. But what I'm saying is once they get through training camp and OTAs and all the different things after they get drafted, they're going to be more ready to play than Trey Lance. It's just how it is. It's unfortunate. Life's not fair. He hasn't gotten a true opportunity. I know that he could be better later, but I don't think they're flirting to be flirting with these guys. I don't. There's no real reason for them to do it, but yet like you said, they've met with DTR and they've met with Jake Haener, and it's just, to me, it's reading tea leaves. Now, maybe they draft none of those guys, but I know that they like both of those guys. Now, whether they draft them is a totally different situation, but like you said, if all of a sudden they do, or if all of a sudden the Colts or one of these other teams, the Texans, and they're acting strange or are drafting different guys or whatever, then that Trey Lance is going to one of those teams. And look, what's funny about it is everybody says that these national guys are saying how, his draft value is terrible or his overall value is terrible. No, it's not. What teams do you know what teams had highly rated? Because he hasn't proven anything negative or positively. For people who say he can't play, based on what? Now, the Niners, again, they see him every day in practice. They know. But for other teams to say whether Trey Lance can or cannot play, they don't know that. They haven't been around him enough.
Yeah, I mean, he's to me, if anything, he should have as much value as he had before, simply
Other
because
than the,
now
the only thing I'd say is if he's healthy, and I think he is healthy.
the ankle,
Yeah,
the ankle's a big question. But beyond that, now there's NFL people and NFL coaches in multiple spots around the league that know his work ethic and know what he's about,
and the
and by
Niners
all
aren't
accounts,
lying
he's
about
got great work ethic.
the Niners aren't lying about that. They don't dislike Trey Lance. He hasn't done anything wrong. It's just Brock Purdy came in and played great. Now, it's a totally different situation than if the Jets tried to trade Zach Wilson. We've seen he doesn't have a clue. And you and I have talked about this. He played his junior year behind a senior-laden offensive line that never got him touched. He played backyard football against Southwest Missouri State and Troy. Didn't play any kind of schedule because BYU is an independent. That's a totally different situation. Mac Jones is up and down. We know. I think I know what Mac Jones is. I don't think he has a whole lot of upside. Justin Fields can run, can't throw yet. So, I mean, we can make some judgments. Trevor Lawrence can obviously play. But out of that draft, Trey is the great unknown. Now, is he dinged a little bit? Sure. You're not going to get 2 first-round picks for him. But I think you could package a third and get into the second, or I think you could package a third or some other stuff and get into maybe the late first. His value, I don't think, is as damaged as what everybody or what a lot of national people say.
Yeah, no, I agree. And also people say, well, why do you really think he's going to be traded during the draft? Because to me, you only have a trade when your view and your asking price for your player jives with what the offers would be. I think if the 49ers are looking for 2 number ones and a number 3, then he's staying. He's not going to get those kinds of offers. They're not going to get those kinds of offers. But I actually think they're willing to take anything from the middle of the first through maybe the top of the third in return for him, especially if they could get a package and maybe multiple picks. Somebody speculated that Houston would throw their second and both their thirds. I think that would be a very attractive package for Trey for sure. Yeah. I just think that there's going to be somebody. I also think look where he ranks. I mean, there's no question in my mind that Trey Lance is a better prospect than probably most of the quarterbacks going in round 2 and later because of his athleticism, his arm strength, his intelligence. He's just a better prospect than these guys. But you made a key point. It doesn't mean that he's more ready to play. Like Haener is definitely more ready to play. DTR is more ready to play. These guys have played 5 years, sometimes some of these guys 6 years of college football. Where Trey's only played 1 year of football since high school. You got to remember that, and it was at the FCS level. So people say, well, you can't get rid of Trey because you may need a quarterback. They need a quarterback, and they probably don't feel like they can trust to play Trey this year. And so they're looking at the trade potential and the veteran-like rookie they got this year with Purdy. We'll see if it all works out. It's going to make for incredible drama for sure.
Yeah, and look, I think people have to get out of their mind, too, that long-term what he's going to be. And look, he's got a ton of potential. I could see Trey Lance being a good quarterback, but they don't have time to wait. It doesn't jive with him. Now, here's where I think it's different than Wiseman. I think as a center, I still think the Warriors could have gotten him 15 minutes. I think they could have still developed on. I think that they jumped the gun a little bit. I don't think GP2 was worth it.
I agree.
That's a different deal. For those who think this is the same, it's not, because there's one position, there's one quarterback, and they just aren't willing anymore. Nothing against Trey. They're not down on Trey. It's just they're not willing to do what they were willing to do last year, which is, okay, let's bring him in, and there's going to be bumps and bruises and interceptions and problems, and he's going to – but you know what? Long-term, he's going to be great. Brock Purdy has unseated him. It's not fair. I know that Brock is hurt, but I feel like they think that he's coming along very, very well. And again, they like Sam Darnold. I don't like Sam Darnold. They like Sam Darnold. And if they added a third quarterback, then I think they'd be comfortable in that situation. And then where does Trey Lance go? How does he develop? That's the issue. You ran out of time, and you can't think about what Trey is going to be in 2 or 3 years. That's not how teams think. Again, I'll defer to you, Krug. You know this. They don't think like that. They're in a championship window. They're thinking like the next few years, Brock Purdy's our guy. We have positions that we need to fill. And here's the other thing that's key here if you read the tea leaves. They have 11 picks, as you well know. 3 in the third, like you said, a bunch in the fifth, bunch in the seventh. They start at 99. There's not 11 spots open on this team. So they're moving, and they're going to be shaking. And what they're going to do is they're going to take some of these picks together, and they're going to try to move up and get good players who can play now. And if you pick at 99 and you try to get a right tackle, now I know what they've done in the mid rounds. We all know, the Fred Warners and George Kittles and Hufungas and all that. That's great. But you can't rely on that right away. Even, it took Hufunga a minute. It even took Kittle a minute. It took, Warner was good, not great. So their first year, it's not like you'd say, hey, let's throw a rookie right tackle out. Now, look, they did it with Spencer Burford. They've done it with some guys, but you really want a rookie right tackle, especially if Purdy's coming back. You need to have a great offensive line. So they want to move up as high as they can get to get an edge or a right tackle or whatever. They're going to combo these picks up. They're not picking 11 guys.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. They have to address their needs. They've got needs in the secondary. They got needs on the O-line. They have needs at edge. To me, if you said, look at their depth chart, where do they really need a starter? That should be the priority. I think it's probably defensive end. I think defensive end is going to be the priority over offensive tackle. Not because they think McKivitz is the superstar, but I think they feel comfortable with McKivitz. You got to remember this. This team went to the NFC Championship game the year before with Tom Compton, and I think McKivitz is definitely an upgrade on Compton. But if you look at their D-line right now, you got Bosa, you got Armstead, you got Hargrave. Well, everything's sliding in that direction. I think that spot, that fourth spot on that defensive line is going to be the priority. You got to find somebody. I don't know if it's Isaiah Foskey, Kalijah Cansey, if it's a free agent, Ngakwe or Leonard Floyd after the draft, Clowney. I'm not sure, but they got to find. To me, they need a starting edge rusher. They need probably a starting right tackle, and maybe one starting nickel corner.
Yeah,
I would agree. Nickel corner is a big nickel corner. Actually, John, is a huge kind of nobody ever talks about it, but that's a huge need.
Well, in today's NFL, and they have Isaiah Oliver. I don't know if they're 100% confident in that. Womack, people like Womack, but he did it in the preseason and didn't do it. They lost a lot of confidence in him, kind of like they did Ambry Thomas. So Thomas is not in the picture. Womack, I'm not saying isn't in the picture, but I don't think they're obviously as high as they were early when you had those interceptions against the Packers. And those, like you said, especially look at this division. I mean, you're talking about Cooper Kupp, right? I think the Seahawks are going to draft a receiver. They could move Lockett in there full time. Now you're looking at a guy like Lockett. Arizona stinks, but they have some good receivers, especially that they can put in the slot. So, I mean, that's a massive position. Plus, that's run defense. They like to blitz the slot blitz. The 49ers like to do that as well. You got to be a tough guy to play that position. So it's a big one. But I agree with you. They need an edge guy. When they went to the Super Bowl in 2019, they had Dee Ford opposite. They've been looking for that guy. And I know that people are going to say, Drake Jackson could step up. There's a number of guys. But again, they don't want to risk these things. This is a really deep draft, as you well know, as well as anybody at that position. What's great about this for them, tight end is deep. Edge is deep. Now, right tackle isn't much. There's a few slot corners out there. The needs that the 49ers have actually match up well with this draft. And like I said, I think they're going to combo picks up. They're going to move around this draft board. And when they find the guy they want, they're not going to be hesitant. And they are aggressive. They go after guys. They don't always get them, but they're going to be aggressive in moving up and trying to combo these picks. Maybe Trey Lance is in there as well to get positions of need. And you nailed it. It's edge, it's right tackle, but I would say edge only because that's what led them to the championship or the NFC Championship 2019. So could you imagine if they get Hargrave, they got Armstead, they got Bosa, and opposite that, you actually have a threat? What the hell do you do if you're an offense? And that's what the Eagles did to them in the NFC Championship game.
Really interesting offseason. The Niners prioritized Hargrave, the interior player, as a rusher over their edge guys. They basically waved goodbye to Ebukam and Amenahue and Willis, three good young players that two of them they had traded for. But I think they did so because they looked at this edge class and said, you know what, there's a ton of good edge players. There's going to be good edge players in every round of this draft. There's good edge players left in free agency. There's going to be good edge players as undrafted guys. That's how many players there are. So I think they set it up right.
Who do you like? Like if let's say they move, because I think they're going to move at least in the second round. So who would be a guy like late first or second, like in that range where they could get, where the Texans pick at 33, if we're talking Lance, or where the Colts pick at 35, or, the funniest thing ever would be if they traded him to the Raiders. I think Raiders have 38 and then there's Jimmy and Trey again. That would be hilarious, but that's probably not going to happen.
Well, you named one of them. I mean, Will McDonald the fourth at Iowa State's like 240, and he's got spin moves, and he's a freaky athlete. He's incredible. I think Isaiah Foskey, Johnny, was at their pro day because his agent was obviously told that they prioritize him. I think Foskey is their guy. I really do. I think he's the guy. He's the local kid from Antioch, De La Salle, team captain, very productive, great workout numbers. He's going to be better, I think, in the next 5 years than he was at Notre Dame. I think he's probably their guy. But Derek Hall from Auburn reminds me a ton of D Ford. And B.J. Ojolari from LSU had a terrific year. Zach Harrison from Ohio State was a 5-star high school recruit who was coached by the same guy who coached Bosa. And believe me, I mean, there's people that think that Harrison is just going to be absolute superstar in the NFL. He ran 4.47.
That's a guy that Krueger could take and light a fire under his ass because he's got everything. He's like you said. What is he, like?
He's a blue chipper.
Like that. He's a massive dude. He's got long arms. He's just never unlocked it. And if, again, I don't know that he's going to go in the second round, but if we're looking at, some of their later picks, maybe third, I don't know that he'd be around in the fifth. But I mean, I've watched, you have too, watched a lot of Ohio State, and I always scratch my head like, why isn't this dude better? Like, those are the kind of guys where I don't know that he's going to get taken in the second, but where we got to remember that Chris Krueger could see somebody and go, you know what, that guy's underachieved, but I'll get it. I'll get him. I'll get him to that level. I could see that. I mean,
but even like day 3, there's going to be all kinds of guys. I'll give you a list of guys that are all these guys. Yaya Diaby from Louisville runs 4.5, and he's 260. Isaiah McGuire from Missouri is a really good player. Byron Young from Tennessee is not really an edge rusher. He's more just like a linebacker, but he plays, he rushes the passer, and he's just electric fast. The guy that you were describing is like kind of a light guy who can bend the edge. Nick Hampton from where's Nick Hampton from? From Appalachian State. Yeah. Yeah, he's a really, really good player. So there's a bunch. There's a bunch of guys in there. And then Tyrus Wheat from Mississippi State is a tremendous edge rusher who's, can go get the quarterback and just, there's a bunch of guys. There really are. And Jose Ramirez. Jose Ramirez is probably one of my favorites. And I'll tell you, the other guy is the San Jose State kid. They call him Junior Fajoko, and our buddy Jordan Elliott on Niners Nation wrote a great piece. He was at the local pro day, and he's just made to play for the Niners. Junior Fajoko was the conference defensive player of the year in that conference, and he's just 270 and just a beast. I mean, he's not the craziest athlete, but his motor is unbelievable, and his production was great. So this is a great draft for edge rushers.
Exactly what you said. I mean, there's elite guys at the top, there's some guys in the middle, and really what they need is, at the very least, is to get a rookie who can bring juice on third down. They've got to get somebody, if Drake Jackson starts, or they can get an edge setter, they start on the outside. But I think they need to find somebody at the very least as a rookie who can come in and juice on third down. And then you mentioned something that I had forgotten. I don't know what's going to happen with some of these guys, but there's still veterans out there that could do that. I cannot believe that the amount of guys that are still out there that are veteran pass rushers, and I don't know what they're waiting for, because once the draft hits, their value is going to drop even that much more. But there's 3 or 4 veterans out there right now that you could say, okay, you can just be a third down guy, and you come in and Robert Quinn, who what do you have, 1 sack the year before, he had 18.5. I mean, and is he that point? I think he's 32. I mean, is he at the point where he's done at 32? I can't believe that he couldn't come in on third downs and give the Niners some juice. I would imagine that not only will they fortify in the draft, I think that they're going to go out, and I think they're going to go and get a veteran pass rusher who can at least be a third down guy and really fortify that line, because they watched that Philly game and went, damn, this is what we used to be. We got to get back to doing this.
Yeah. They want to build the dominant defense. They want to build the dominant line. That's why I think that if they could get a late first, they might consider Kalijah Cansey, because I think Cansey could be the replacement down the road for Armstead, but right away you could play him in a rotation on that D-line in a number of spots. And there's a lot of Aaron Donald in Kalijah Cansey. He was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. Mark Hope says, are Tommy and Aaron both vying for a team? I think those guys. What do you make of the? We got another one on Aaron here. Mark says, if I'm Gutekunst, that's Brian Gutekunst, I believe, the GM of the Packers. He says, I don't trade Aaron Rodgers. I fine him if he doesn't show up and play. I also think Tom is playing somewhere this year. Are they holding up top quarterback spots? What do you think? What do you think of the Rodgers to the Niners talk?
The Jets. You know this as well as I do. You know how these guys operate. They're just doing the dance. And the reason why I think Trey's going to get traded, the reason I know Rodgers is getting traded to the Jets, because the draft is the deadline. Because it's just like all of us. I don't, like that's why I would never go online and buy a car. I want my car right now. I don't want to wait weeks. I don't want to wait years. I don't want to go on a list. I don't want to wait 6 months. The Jets want Aaron Rodgers and the Packers want picks now. The 49ers need picks now to get a right tackle or to get an edge rusher or whatever it is they need. They don't want to wait till next year and trade somebody. So the deadline for all this stuff, and when do deals get done? At the deadline. So the deadline is the draft, and that's when these deals are going to get done. So Rodgers is going to the Jets because the deadline hasn't hit yet. And I think I don't remember which NFL insider said this, but they're negotiating again. They're talking again. Well, yeah, because it's draft week. So they're going to start talking again. They didn't need to before.
Right. I mean, exactly. The draft is when things get done. I mean, look at your history lesson on the NFL. You don't see a lot of trades get done, at least not with significant compensation after the draft. The other reason I listed the draft as when I thought Trey would get dealt, and I know, Johnny, there's a cap hurdle, and I want your thoughts on that too. But I just think there's a PR issue when you're trading a quarterback and somebody that you invested so much in Lance. I think obviously you've got his replacement already as Brock Purdy, and you feel good about Darnold, and you probably feel good about some quarterback you're going to draft this weekend. But I still think if you're the Niners, do you want to trade Trey Lance to Team X for a 20, after Brock gets healthy in June, when you know for sure his status, and then get a third-round pick or a second-round pick in next year's draft, and then have Trey play all year for whatever team and maybe play well, and you're going to try to sell, but we got a second next year. But who's that going to be? Where if you trade him on draft night and all of a sudden you turn that into Kalijah Cansey or Michael Mayer or Isaiah Foskey, and it's like, hey, we traded Trey, but we got this guy. And the narrative –
right? Or whatever. Yeah, no, you're 100%
I mean,
right.
It changed. To me, though, it changes also – expect Trey to maybe play well. You know what I mean? So you better get something good in return. And to me, if you're in your window and you're trying to win right now because you got Trent Williams, you don't want future picks. So what do you think of the Trey timeline on the trade? Because one thing Rappaport did reference, he's like, he thinks it will happen within months. So that suggests that maybe they'll wait. But as you and I have kind of suggested here, I think there's reason not to wait. What do you think?
Well, I know they get hit with a cap charge, and if it's post June 1, then the cap charge is spread out. I understand all those kind of things. Look, we all know this. You and I know this. People listening know this. Everybody knows this. The cap is fluid. So Parag Marathi is a genius, and he'll figure all that stuff out. It's not going to be a reason why not to trade Trey Lance because of the financial implications and exactly what gets accelerated onto the cap. That's not the reason. If they don't get the right offer, he's not going to get traded. I think it's more than 50-50 that he does, because there's enough teams that need a quarterback. And I'm not down on him. And again, for all those who say they haven't seen him play, the Niners see him all the time. They know whether he can or can't. And they've decided that Brock is the guy. And like you said, the deadline is the draft. And they don't want to wait another year for their picks. That means that this window, because the whole reason they would trade him is because they're in a championship window. Houston could wait, or the Colts could wait, whatever young team that they trade him to, they can wait. But, when James Wiseman went to the Pistons, they played him. They didn't care. The Niners cannot take that chance again. And so they would move him to a team. They would get those picks. And in exchange, and it's a little bit like GP2, but hopefully you get a much better player. You need something for the now. And like you pointed it out perfectly, you trade this guy. Let's say he plays well, and you get a second round pick. Well, I need something tangible. I need Foskey to get 8 sacks, or I need Cansey to, do whatever guy they pick. Then that guy actually did something, and you can say, we traded him, but the logic behind it was we needed the now for the later, and we took that risk. The later for the later doesn't work. In other words, he goes to another team and you get a third rounder. Now, the one thing that we haven't talked about is they're not only going to get a pick. The way that things work now, you're going to get conditionals. So what's going to happen with the Rodgers trade is they're going to give what they're going to give, and then it's going to be based on Rodgers' performance and how long he stays around. And if he plays a couple more years, then the Jets would probably have to give up more. The same thing's going to happen with Trey Lance. It may not be the pick that you want as a 49ers fan originally. You would think he would be worth more, But if he plays well, then the 49ers are smart, and they'll probably get additional picks or, ones that could be, this turns into that. A third turns into a second turns into a first, depending on how well Trey Lance would play.
You're sitting next to Greg. He likes Darnold. I don't get it. I've never understood the Darnold fascination. It sounds like you and I are on the same page. When he makes his argument for why Darnold and why that addition's a good addition, what's his argument? What's he backing? What's his reasoning on why he thinks Darnold's good?
Well, it's kind of and again, you and I have done drafts together for so long that he's looking at the Darnold that came out. And essentially, I think that in the conversations we've had is that the Jets are malpractice and Carolina is malpractice. And this guy has all the skill set and the arm strength and all these kind of things, and exactly what Kyle Shanahan would look for in a quarterback. And just to rewind very quickly, the reason why they didn't take a Darnold when they had an opportunity to is because they had gotten Jimmy in 2017, and then Darnold came out in the draft in 2018. My eyes tell me something, and then the numbers are even, I don't have them exactly in front of me, but I've done a piece on this. I mean, in terms of since, all starting quarterbacks since 2018, he's got the worst QB rating. He's got the worst touchdown interception ratio. He's got the worst yards per attempt. He's played 56 games. He's thrown like 55 interceptions. I mean, I liked Sam Darnold coming out of USC, but that whole quarterback class has been a disaster led by Baker Mayfield. And it's okay, there's one thing, and this is what Greg looks at, that it's an Al Davis kind of a way to look at it, which is he's got all the talent in the world and the arm strength and the physical skills, and he's athletic and all these different things. And it's these other teams had malpractice on him. And again, look, he knows what he's talking about. He's smart. I could be 100% wrong, and you could be 100% wrong, and Sam Darnold comes in and is great. It's just the track record of someone after a couple of teams and failing with those teams. If he was that good, then why didn't Carolina try to keep him? I mean, didn't Carolina bring in Andy Dalton or something like that? And then now they moved all the way up to the first pick in the draft. If they had seen those flashes from 25-year-old Sam Darnold, wouldn't they keep him? Wouldn't other teams try to get Sam Darnold? I mean, what did the Niners pay him? $3.5 million? I mean, for a third string quarterback, that's a lot of money. But if other teams were clamoring for Sam Darnold, wouldn't we have seen it? I mean, we had Jake DeLomon, who's their color analyst for the Panthers, and he didn't exactly give a glowing report of Sam Darnold down the stretch. So, look, I don't like him. You don't like him. Greg likes him. That's fine. Everyone's due their opinion. It's just I'm doing it based on like a Vegas thought, is that if you look back on this, the chances of Sam Darnold succeeding based on everything we've seen from quarterbacks in his very similar position, they haven't succeeded on their third team. It just doesn't happen.
It's funny, too. If you asked me who would win a competition this summer between Darnold and Lance, I would say Lance. And yet it's interesting that Ian Rappaport, now Jeremy Fowler today on ESPN, both referencing that, Fowler's report was sourced from teams around the league. He said teams around the league believe that Sam Darnold is going to, be the week one starter and play a lot at the beginning. And then, of course, the Rappaport piece made it sound like maybe it was coming from the 49ers. But clearly there's a belief that they're going with Darnold. And to me, if there was one shocking moment of the offseason, if you want to, be over dramatic about it a little bit, I will, is when Shanahan said that Sam Darnold had as good a skill set as any quarterback he's seen. Right. I mean, once he said that, John, I was like, whoa, what? Did I just hear that right? So he either believes that or he's building him up or whatever. But that was a wow freaking quote.
Well, and that's what Greg believes. He believes his skill set is as good as anybody. But how many quarterbacks can we say about that? I mean, Jamarcus Russell had a great skill set. I mean, he had a great arm, and he could do all these different things. But that's not the game. And what I think is so funny about it is you get Brock Purdy, who maybe doesn't have all the physical skills of everybody else, but the 49ers are in love with him. Why? From the mental side, he gets it out. He knows, he knows the offense. He knows where to go with the ball. He's just all these things all these mental things that Brock Purdy has done. That's what the 49ers have fallen in love with. But then you look at Darnold, who hasn't proven it, and it's the physical side that everybody likes. He's got the skill set and the athleticism and the arm strength and then this and then that. I get it, but at some point you have to have production to go along with it, with everything else. How many times have we seen guys come into the league that just look like, oh my God, in any sport, right? I mean, NBA guys who come out of the gym or what. It's not about that. It's especially at this position, there's a mental side. That's why I like Jake Haener. There's certain guys I like as far as quarterbacks. And like you said, that's why everybody's looking at these cognitive tests now and guys are getting 98s, and then CJ Stroud gets an 18. And all of a sudden, maybe he's dropping on draft day because maybe he doesn't see it or process it or get it out or whatever the case may be. But Darnold hasn't done that. I mean, again, completion percentage. Look at all the numbers of starting quarterbacks since 2018, and Sam Darnold is near or out the bottom in all of those. So the physical skill set is nice, but it's never been put together. Now, is it those other two teams that he was on that had malpractice against him? That's what I think the 49ers think.
It's funny. Every scout or every personnel person has a different thing that they like. Some people like big hands on quarterbacks. Some people like, the tall 6'5", stature in the pocket. Some guys like mobility in quarterbacks, accuracy, leadership. There's all kinds of different things. Winning, just, hey, did the guy win? Hey, you know what? This guy never lost. And people will put a lot of credence in a lot of different attributes. To me, the one thing I always look for is how do the players play in the All-Star game, like a Senior Bowl or an East-West. Why? Because everybody's learning the offense at the same speed, which is in the NFL, your game plan is literally a week-to-week plan. So, yeah, we're going to practice things in camp, but this week we're getting ready for the Cardinals, and we're doing these plays and these formations and this and that, and you got to be able to digest it, and spit and be able to produce within like a whole structure, whether it's a defensive structure. In this case, we're talking about an offensive structure with receivers you didn't know and an offense you had no inkling about until the other day. So it's a great example of, can you digest things quickly enough to then win week to week in the NFL, because next week's a whole new plan with a whole new series of plays and formations, and you got to make it all work. And so to me, the fact that Jake Haener went down there and then, had a really nice career at Fresno State, but then goes there, he was the MVP of that Senior Bowl, and he looked really comfortable running that offense, and he looked like he'd been playing with those receivers for years. And it's like things like that to me are a bigger deal than, man, did you see the combine throw, or did you see his elbow was here and his toe was there and his release was here? You know what I'm saying, John? To me, I like it when you can get with an NFL coaching staff and you got to learn the game plan, terminology, be able to lead the guys, and the guy who goes out there and does it and has success, that's the game.
Well, and if you look at it too, like I can't believe this is happening again. I guess enough time has passed, but did you see where Will Levis threw it through the goalpost from his knees at the 50? Kyle Bullard did that. He was the worst quarterback I ever saw.
Exactly.
I mean, are we really doing this again? Look how he threw this. I mean, that's why I hate pro days. It's not about how far you can throw it, Uncle Rico. It's it's the whole ball of wax, and it's why they love Trey, or it's why they love Brock Purdy. And the other thing, and you just pointed this out about Jake Haener, the players love Brock Purdy. Players love playing with Jake Haener. And if you sit and you ever listen to an interview, we've interviewed him 3 times now. I mean, the dude knows the game, and he's a gamer, and he's had to work hard because, you know what? He didn't have the physical skills. And so what did he have to develop? The mental side of things. And that's why when these guys come in, like you just pointed out, they can learn the offense, they can lead the guys. There's all these different things. And with Kyle Shanahan, by the way, you were just talking about what is important to a coach. What's important to Kyle Shanahan, as you well know, Krug, is maximizing each play. So he's got a design of each play. Did you go to the right guy? Did you maximize the play? And if you didn't, you may have an 80-yard gain on something, and you run over the sideline and you're jumping up and down. And Kyle's going to take you quietly aside and say, actually, the post was open on that. You missed it. And he's only reason he's saying that to you is because he wants the ball to go to a certain place and each play be maximized and not have it to be, the guy broke 3 tackles and got an 80-yard touchdown, and that was lucky. He wants there to be a process for every play, and he wants every play to be maximized. And again, I'm not saying they're down on Trey Lance, and I don't honestly know why they drafted him, because that's not Trey Lance. He's going to play off, and it's going to be an off-schedule play, and he's going to make up. That's what he's going to do. With a guy like Brock Purdy, Kyle knows where the ball is going to go. With Jake Haener, he knows where the ball is going to go, and that's really what Kyle is comfortable with.
Well, I mean, they did a bad job at understanding where Trey was as a player and where they were as a franchise, and how much time they had to commit to this project. And I think that's really it. And I think they're just going to move. They're going to move him to a good spot where he's going to get. To me, the Texans would be perfect. Why? Because D'Amico's got a 6-year deal. They're not ready to win. He could build up there. He knows that offense. Bobby Slowick has been. He knows Bobby. It's Bobby is the OC. He won't have to learn a new offense. He'll have plenty of time to grow and develop. To me, that Houston makes a lot of sense. Tennessee makes a lot of sense too.
And that's the team he needs. He needs a team. And I agree with if these rumors are true, they could be totally wrong. And CJ Stroud goes to, or Levis goes to, or Richardson goes to. But I mean, if you think, I don't know how you would build an NFL team, but I mean, I'm looking at Houston going, look, they're not a quarterback away. Why have the quarterback get beat up? We've both seen this. The quarterback gets beat up. He loses his confidence. 2 more years, like the Zach Wilson thing, you have to get another quarterback. Why not pick a sure thing in Will Anderson, build a really good defense? You've got picks 12, you've got 33, you got 65, you got 73. You could use some of those picks to trade for Trey Lance. Here's the one thing I don't know. I don't know what DeMeco Ryans thinks of Trey Lance. I know that Robert Saleh is not really high on him, so I don't think he'd be going to the Jets, who have I know they in the first round, what are they at? 13 or something like that, but then they got picks 42 and 43. Like, there would be a perfect team to trade with, the Jets, but I don't think Saleh likes Trey Lance. So, it all would depend on DeMeco Ryans. If he gives them a ringing endorsement, it wouldn't shock me whatsoever if they went, say, Will Anderson at number 2, Houston, whatever it is they want to do at 12. And then you start getting into the conversation that if the Niners package a 3rd or 2 and Trey Lance, now all of a sudden they're picking at 33, and they could have, the second tier of tackles or a really elite edge guy. They could really get into that. And I know that the faith would go absolutely bananas. But again, to go back to something consistent that you and I have talked about, they are in win a Super Bowl now mode.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think every guy between Kyle and John and Jed have something to prove. And they're all going to have arrived. Jed will have arrived in the eyes of Dr. John and Denise. John will have basically solidified success in a third endeavor. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame football player. He was a damn good TV analyst. And now, to me, this would be kind of like the crowning achievement of his football career. And for Kyle Shanahan is widely respected as a top-tier coach. He just doesn't have what McVay has, which is that ring. And if he has it, I think Kyle will graduate into an Andy Reid kind of comfort zone where he's even better if he gets that ring. Right now, there's so much angst about not getting it. He wants it so bad he can taste it. Once he gets it, I think he'll relax and more will come. But I think all these guys will be made men here in San Francisco and in the Bay Area if they get this Super Bowl. So it's not about any one quarterback, and that's what people are missing. It's about winning now in this window, and Brock's the guy they feel like they can do that with. That's what it's about. It's not about his skill set over Trey's skill set, his personality over Trey's personality. It's about readiness. The game starts next week, theoretically.
And think about, and you just hit on something really important. They don't think about what's going to happen or 2 or 3 years from now. They don't think about, geez, this trade's going to make us look bad, or this and that. They want to win a Super Bowl, and you just talked about a legacy. Kyle Shanahan's dad won 2. He's won none. Hey, right. Kyle, when are you going to win one of these things? Jed York, for years, his family's putting pressure on him. Jed, we haven't won one of these things since '94. John Lynch, I think John Lynch, the minute he wins one, is going to leave the organization, go back to TV for some of that funny money, but he can't leave because he's one of those guys that starts when he finishes what he starts. So you're sitting as an organization, and okay, Trey Lance, let's just say worst case scenario happens and Trey Lance becomes, I don't know, Patrick Mahomes. All right, let's just say that happens. But if they win a Super Bowl in the meantime, it doesn't matter. And they don't think 2 and 3 years down the line, because that's what championship windows are. And once you're out of it, you're out of it. So lots of times you see this. You see this in baseball all the time with young players. How could Fernando Tatis Jr. be on the Padres for James Shields? That makes no sense, because you're trying to win now. And sometimes you look stupid when Jeff Bagwell comes for Larry Anderson. That's just what happens. Brett Favre got traded, from the Falcons to the Packers. Now the Falcons sucked, and that was a horrible move. But if you win a Super Bowl in the meantime, then you always are going to look back to that moment. The Cubs won in 2016. Nobody cares that they traded, Torres and all these different guys, and they traded Dylan Cease, and they got a World Series trophy out of it, and they don't care. And that's where the Niners are. They want to erase all this stuff. They've heard they're an elite franchise, but haven't won a Super Bowl. And so from Jed to John Lynch to Kyle Shanahan, look, the word is desperate. They are desperate to win a Super Bowl. They really are.
They're in ultimate go for it mode, and if you don't recognize that, you're not watching close enough. Glass half full guy says, could you guys see the 49ers using some of their picks to get a veteran from other teams? This is an interesting question. What do you think, John? I mean, the two guys that come to mind when I think, because to me, you win a Super Bowl when you have great players. I mean, to be real basic, right? You win a Super Bowl when you've got a bunch of great players. That's how the Rams did it. That's how the Chiefs have done it. That's how it's done. You got to have great players. And then you're going to face Mahomes most likely at some point. So you better have great. How do you beat Mahomes? I don't think there is a secret. So I think really what you need is you just have to have great players on all three levels of your defense. The two guys that are great football players, just trying to simplify things, that are available from what I can tell this offseason that I would have interest in trading picks for on draft day. One is Budda Baker, who the Cardinals are obviously moving on from, and the other is Devin White. Now, I know they don't need Devin White, but look how NFL teams use, look at the way Seattle used Bobby Wagner at the end there, where he's like a delayed blitzer. I almost feel like the super fast inside backer who can be this awesome delayed blitzer and surprise teams is almost more valuable than an edge guy and can be just as valuable to your pass rush. Devin White is that kind of guy. I mean, he's 1 year away from his fifth-year option. You could get him probably for relatively cheap. They're hugged up against the cap. I'd extend for Devin White. The same way the Ravens extended for Roquan Smith, I would extend for Devin White. I realize you got Warner and you got Greenlaw and you got Marcelino, but I mean, play Devin White at defensive end if you have to. I mean, he's that great. And then Budda Baker is he's a superstar.
Would they trade in division?
I don't. Probably not. But those are the only two that I can think of. But there are probably some other guys around the league that are going to get dealt. I mean, I know Hopkins is out there, but he's got a massive contract nobody wants. I'm not really sure what veterans are out there. I haven't seen the rumor mill.
I'll give you one that look, it's probably pie in the sky, and they would probably never do it. But because he's been disappointing, not because of production, but because of injuries, Chase Young. He's 24 years old. He's only got a cap hit right now. I'm looking at it right now. His cap hit this year is 10.9. It's not awful. And then you got an option. You got to pick up the fifth year. So he's going into his fourth year of his rookie deal, and his fifth year is a $17 million deal. So maybe that's too rich. Maybe it's not. But again, these are the type of deals that you make because you want to win a Super Bowl right now. Can you imagine Chase Young opposite Bosa? Now people are watching the show and they're thinking, "What are you on crack?" Maybe. But the reality of it is that that's a guy that because of injuries is maybe falling out of favor, makes a bunch of money. If let's say again they need a quarterback, you want to give me Trey Lance because at 15 they're not going to be in the quarterback derby for these top guys. So would Washington rather than Hendon Hooker at 25 coming off an ACL and potentially making that move, or would you rather have Trey Lance? We'll throw a couple of threes at you. You give us Chase Young. Now again, that's a very short-term move because he's going into the fourth year. It's not a huge number. But then you'd have to make a decision after this year if he was really good. But to me, that's the kind of thing that you're looking for, a real splash. And then I don't have right tackles in front of me, but that would make sense to me. You're asking a glass half full guy if they're looking at a certain position. It's nothing against Colton McKivitz. It's just if I'm protecting my quarterback and I've already got a young right guard in Spencer Burford and I've already got a young left guard in why am I blanking on the name?
Aaron Banks.
I've got a pretty young offensive line. Do I want to go young with McKivitz at right tackle? Maybe I do want to go get a veteran of somebody who's going to offer me a right tackle during the draft that's, an above average guy. So I know that we're talking about drafting these guys at right tackle or edge, and edge is extremely deep. So maybe you don't go out and get Chase Young because it's such a deep class, but I could see them wanting to get a veteran right tackle because they just don't trust McKivitz. And if you don't trust McKivitz, you're sure as hell not going to trust a rookie right tackle unless you can move a Trey Lance and get into the 34, 35 range and potentially get the top of the second tier tackles. But again, even if you get one of those guys, there's no guarantee that he's going to be able to play at a level that's better than Colton McKivitz, who's been here, 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, I would look for, like Mekhi Becton for the Jets, who's been kind of disappointing, who's got, maybe kind of a bum knee, but man, if his knee checks out, I mean, maybe, the other question I think that we haven't really hit, but it's definitely a question going into this thing. What about guys who had more value in the draft a couple years ago who just, for whatever reason, haven't worked out? Ambry Thomas was a third-round pick. I could see them moving him on a day 3 pick in this draft. Javon Kinlaw, now with the addition of Hargrave. I really think, John, from being in the locker room so much this year, that I don't know that Kinlaw would be the best player if he's not going to play. I mean, if he's going to be like in a rotation and he's just a part-time player, I don't know that he would be happy in that role. Maybe I'm reading the guy wrong. Maybe he'd be happy in any role. But I've talked to him a few times. I just don't know that he's the right personality. I could see them moving on from Javon in this draft. But it's those fifth-year option guys. I'll give you a couple others that are kind of interesting. Miami's got a corner named Noah Igbenogany, who they drafted, but they're not going to give the fifth-year option to. He's going to be probably dealt this weekend. The other guy that I think I've always liked, and I know he's going to be dealt this weekend or maybe released, is the Chiefs running back who lost the job to Pacheco, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And Edwards-Helaire is a good back. He just hasn't quite come of age in Kansas City. You could probably get him for like a 6th-round pick if you wanted to acquire him from Kansas City.
And
so
Niners always need backs.
Yeah, I mean, and a guy like that I think's really got a lot of talent. So just a couple of the names that I've kind of seen out there. Before we let you go, but one thought here. Eagles talking about Derrick Henry and talking about Budda Baker. To me, I'm going to keep both eyes on the Niners, but at least one eye has to be looking at times for what the Eagles are going to do in this draft. To me, John, it's almost like the Niners and the Cowboys in the 90s right now. It's the NFC. I do not fear any of these other teams. I don't fear Detroit. I don't fear Atlanta, the Rams, Green Bay. I don't fear any of these teams. To me, it's the Niners or the Eagles for the next 3 years at least in the NFC. So I'm going to be watching closely what they do. Do you think Derrick Henry could wind up in Philly?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where Tennessee is. I mean, Ryan Tannehill's got 1 more year left on his deal. He's not going anywhere. I read today where he's on the block. No kidding. He makes $36 million and he stinks. So of course he's on the block and they want to get a new quarterback. Nobody's taking his $36 million. So if Houston's stuck spinning their wheels, and remember, this is always what happens when new GMs come in. I don't know what Rand Carthon thinks of his team. They've always been this run the ball, play defense team. And obviously he comes from the 49ers, so he's going to do that to an extent. But if Rand Carthon, when people are saying, how could Derrick Henry be on the block? Because they have a new GM, and he's going to evaluate everything. And it's their job to throw all this against the wall and see who's interested. So if somebody says, hey, I'll give you, everybody's for sale. I'll give you a 1 for Derrick Henry. He's going to move it because that position isn't that valued. Where has Tennessee gotten? Great. Derrick Henry's awesome. Where has it gotten him? Nowhere. So if he can get a 1st-round pick for a running back, and running backs traditionally go, in the 3rd, 4th, 5th. I mean, where Kyle Shanahan's gotten his running backs, they're just trying to get value. The thing that would scare the hell out of me about Philly is if they got Budda Baker to replace Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, because he's the perfect guy. He's been a pain in the ass for the 49ers forever. And I heard his name with Philly and it went, ugh. And remember, Philly's got pick 10. Philly's got pick 30. New Orleans did some stupid swap last year. So now Philly's got their pick at 10. They got their own pick at 30. They got a pick in the 60s. They got a pick at 94. So while the 49ers don't pick till 99, the biggest threat to the 49ers in the NFC has 4 picks, including 2 in the 1st round, before the 49ers even get to the mic. So look, they're gonna do some things. They can move around. They can add some veterans. Plus, this as well as I do. They got 2 guys out of Georgia, so they lost linebackers. They got Nakobe Dean right there. They got Jordan Davis on the defensive line. Howie Roseman is a wizard. Let's give credit where credit is due. The Niners can beat the Eagles. I'm not saying they can't, but Howie Roseman has guys in place to replace a couple of places. They lost Sanders, so what? They picked up Rashad Penny. They could take a guy like Bijan Robinson, the Texas running back, which would scare the hell out of me at like 10 or maybe even at 30. So, Philly's in a really good spot. And if they were to add somebody like Budda Baker, that would not be good.
Johnny, great to see you. Let's finish with three names. Three names. Here are the three questions.
Yeah.
Give me the rookie quarterback you think they will emerge from the draft with, the guy in any draft in your lifetime that you were dead sold was awesome, who wound up being a bust, and your favorite. We'll go Matt Barrow's draft crush. And I don't remember. Did Barrows put his draft thing out there yet? Maybe it's coming Tuesday. I haven't checked it. I got to check the Athletic on that one. But who's the one player that you love in this draft? The guy you loved in a past draft that you just thought he was going to be great and he busted, and the rookie quarterback most likely to become a Niner.
Okay, rookie quarterback most likely to become a Niner, I think, is Jake Haener. I know it's a local thing, and I know those kind of things, but he hates talking about this. I brought it up one time to him at the Super Bowl, and the answer was so like, don't ask me about that. And I know Mayoko did the same thing at the pro day, but I mean, he is, whether he wants to admit it or not, he looks a lot like Brock Purdy, acts a lot like Brock Purdy, smart like Brock Purdy, and I think the Niners like that kind of quarterback. So I would say Haener. I don't know why this guy pops in my mind as the guy I thought was going to be awesome. Drew Bledsoe had a good career. I thought Drew Bledsoe was going to be like rewriting records, like Brady.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know. When he came out, it was at 93 and he went first. Rick Meyer went second. And I thought, man, I saw Bledsoe at Washington State. He was throwing darts everywhere. And I thought, this dude is going to be like all timer, right? And he was good. Then Brady replaced him. We know it wasn't that he was bad. It's just that I thought he was going to be amazing. I'm trying to think who else. I'm trying to think of a Niner.
Well, I'll give you the guy that I thought was going to be great. And I mean, I talked him up. I thought he was going to be great. And he was solid, but then just never got to anywhere close to great. Carlos Hyde. I thought Carlos Hyde, because I saw Carlos Hyde in the bowl game his final year with the Buckeyes. And I think he had some monster day, 3 touchdowns and like 175 yards. And I'm like, oh, Carlos Hyde. He was there at the end of the Gore years, and it just didn't quite happen.
Trying to think. I got to get a Niners one on here. I'm trying to think who, man, because I can go the other way. Like Aldon Smith. I remember Aldon Smith when they first drafted him, and I went down to a Sunday practice, and I didn't know anything. And it was a hardball practice. It was like, you were down there, I think.
Yeah, I can remember that.
And I remember Matt Mayoko had this big safari hat on, and I went up to him and made fun of him. Like, what are you kidding me? And he's like, you'll see. And so Harbaugh had one of those 4-hour practices, and Staley, it was the first time they put pads on. Staley could not block Aldon Smith. And we were all sitting there going, who's this guy? And remember, J.J. Watt's in that draft and Von Miller's in that draft. And right away, you were like, this dude. Like, because when they drafted him at 7, I was like, who's this guy? Like, what are they doing? And first practice, he absolutely, I mean, he's those long arms. He's just crushing Joe Staley. All due respect, Joe Staley, but I was just like, wow, this dude is unbelievable. So I can think of that guy. I'm trying to think of a Niners pick that I just absolutely loved. Let me pull something up here. And then what was your third question?
The third one was just give me one player in this draft that you love, that you just, it doesn't have to be a Niner need or anybody you think's going to them necessarily. Could just be anybody that you saw this year that you just thought, oh my God, that guy's incredible.
Man, there's a ton of them. You mentioned Cansey. He's nice because I just think he's being extremely underrated. I wish they could get their hands on Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon as a guy, Devin Weatherspoon. I like the early corners in this draft. I absolutely love all those guys. One guy who's vastly underrated. Well, not vastly, because some people think he's going to go in the top 15. I hate when guys sit out bowl games. Utah got smoked in their bowl game, but Dalton Kincaid, the tight end out of Utah, they're never going to get him because he's going to get picked too fast. Could you imagine if they had Kincaid and Kittle? They couldn't, with all the other weapons that they have, you absolutely positively couldn't even guard what the 49ers do. Zay Flowers is a guy I really like out of Boston College, guy that's going to be in the slot. Julius Brents, a big corner. I would love for the 49ers to pick up him. Who else do I love out of this draft? Let's see. There's so many guys. I guess that's it. I gotta go to the 49ers draft history. I gotta find somebody that I absolutely loved. And
I'll give you another one. JJ Stokes. I was so convinced JJ Stokes was going to be great. I
He
mean,
was
it
so
was
good.
they traded up for him, and he dominated the Pac-12, and he had a 4.71 40 coming out, and it's like I was like, it doesn't matter. I saw him run away from guys in the Pac-12. I don't care if they think he's a little slow. He'll be great in the pros. Sure enough, he was a good receiver. He just never could make the big play. He was always kind of getting run over from behind.
There's a bunch of them now that I'm looking at it. All right. I think both you and I were together on this whole one, and maybe injuries just don't count because people say, "Oh, well, the guy got hurt." You never know. Jalen Hurd. Remember a couple of years ago in 19 when they took Jalen Hurd, same draft, they took Nick Bosa 1, Samuel 3. Jalen Hurd was like a running back at Tennessee and a receiver at Baylor, and everybody was like, "This guy's the combo." Kyle's got all these things written up for him. He's going to play slot. He's going to play some tight end. They can run him on reverses. Like, remember he scored that touchdown in the preseason game against Dallas.
Do you remember the practices we were at where he was literally talking trash to everybody? He was making plays in practice and talking trash like he was like a 5-year veteran and a Pro Bowler. And I was like, oh my God, look at this guy.
We forget Reuben Foster. I mean, when Reuben Foster was at Alabama, he was he was one of the best college linebackers of all time. He hit everything that moved. But you and I, this is another thing. You and I were at training camp together, and I'm trying to think. I think it was Juice. I think it was Kyle Juszczyk. Kyle Juszczyk put a move on him, and I don't think Reuben Foster still has gotten turned around from it. And when I saw that play, I went, "Oh no," because he just. I want to put this delicately. He just never picked it up, right? I mean, on or off the field. And when he was at Alabama, he was like a heat-seeking missile. And when they trade, because we all know the story, right? New Orleans wanted to take him. John gets up there, takes him ahead of time. And when they took him, I thought, man, this is the next Patrick Willis. Yeah. This guy's going to be awesome. And then we saw him in camp. He couldn't cover a blade of grass in the pass game. And you got to be able to do both, right? And I don't know. It never clicked. And I think, is he in one of the new leagues, the USFL or something? I think he's in now.
I mean, I hate to say this because it's such a terrible indictment, but it looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. You know what I mean? He's just not good. I mean, he hasn't been good anywhere. It wasn't like he was good other places. I'll give you another guy who was like that. Taylor Mays. Was at USC. It's like Taylor Mays. You couldn't watch an ABC Pac-12 broadcast without them just absolutely drooling all over Taylor Mays. And this is in the Singletary era, and this guy just stunk. I mean, he had no movement ability. He had straight line speed, no quickness, no agility, no coverage ability. It was like I watched 2 practices, and I'm like, the guy looks good in a uniform, but that's it. I mean, he just cannot play.
Well, you know what's so funny about it is once you go down to camp, and you and I we hang out a lot at camp and stand next to each other and talk about guys. And you know right away, like either a guy can play or he can't play. And it doesn't. And literally when people hear this, when fans hear this, they think to themselves, oh, that's not true. Once you get on the field, it does not matter where you were drafted. And you can be incredibly embarrassed. I remember when Matt Breida was wearing 49. And you and I were standing next to each other, and this dude had another gear. And we were like, who the hell is 49? Because he's going to make this team. And, there were a bunch of running backs ahead of him, and he was a free agent. And we all knew, like, Breida's, and then he changed his number. But, I mean, we're like, 49? Who's this dude? And we knew. And it was the same thing with Elijah Mitchell. He was wearing 49, and he was crushing everybody on the field. And Trey Sermon was doing nothing. And early in camp, we went, okay, Elijah Mitchell is a lot better than Trey. Like you just know right away whether a guy can play, and you can see it from training camp.
No question. Last one, Johnny. Awesome stuff. I'll say this. I had a lot of confidence early on in this regime and Kyle Shanahan because I really felt like his offense was proven, that he would bring points. And I think we saw the best of it last year with Brock Purdy. It really can produce points. I was unsure about John Lynch because I knew John Lynch was an awesome player, and I knew he was a nice guy. I knew he was a smart guy from Stanford, but I just didn't know how he would transition to being a personnel guy, and what would his scouting staff look like? Would he get comfortable? Would it be hit and miss consistently? Would he not like the long hours and that kind of thing? I just think the Niners, especially coming out of last year, are just in an awesome place right now when it comes to personnel. I mean, look at how many good football players they added last year in the offseason. This year they're going to bring all those guys back, and there's the McCrary Balls and the Nick Zakells and the Tay Martins and the Kalia Davises and the Samuel Womacks. These guys can all play, and nobody really knows that yet. And it's like, to me, I just feel really good about where they're at as far as they're going to get 7 or 8, 9 picks in the draft, but they're going to get 7 or 8 or 9 bites of the apple with the undrafted guys, and they're going to hit on some of those too. So it's like they're in a really good spot personnel-wise. I think them and the Eagles are far and away the deepest teams in the NFC. That's Lynch. I think we need to take a minute and give Lynch his flowers. They haven't gotten the Super Bowl, but they have annually been one of the NFL's deepest rosters. It's very much a developmental deal they got going on down there right now, but I think people are going to see the benefit of last year's picks this summer, and they're going to understand that John's got momentum going here with this position that maybe not everybody sees right now.
No, and again, you know this better than anybody, and you know the draft as well as anybody, and everybody knows this that watches you on a regular basis. But where you go, or what point you get to, and this is where it's fun to be a 49ers fan right now, is they know what they're looking for. So Houston is starting over, and they've got to get certain players, and they got to set a tone. The 49ers are way past that. They got a bunch of tone setters. They know what they want out of each position. Maybe John was learning on the job, and Kyle at the beginning to a certain extent, but they have a clear vision and everybody's on the same page, whether it's Adam Peters or everybody in the front office and John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. They know exactly what they're looking for on the defensive scheme. They know what kind of players they know. They don't, if a guy doesn't work out, it's because of the guy, not because of the team. They have a perfect setup. They have guys like Chris Kasarik. They do all these things. And then it's like, okay, this is what we're looking for in a for example, a speed rusher opposite Bosa or a right tackle. They know exactly what they're looking for. They know the type of mentality. They know the height, weight, speed. They know everything that they're looking for. Houston's got to set that up. These new teams with new coaches, it takes a long time to do that. So exactly what you just said, where New England was for a long time, where Seattle was. Seattle still does this, where they exactly know between Pete Carroll and John Schneider exactly what they're looking for. And the Mel Kipers and Todd McShays with his orange face and all these different guys and this is the problem with mock drafts, is that they're thinking need, but they're not in the building and they don't know, what exactly they're looking for. So they may mock a guy because they've got him higher rated on the board and they're just plugging him into these certain spots. And this is why they get him into the first round and they're right. I mean, what is Mel right? Probably 27 of 32, probably right. But what they don't do all the time outside of the top few is they don't get the right player or the right team because they still don't realize that in that building, certain things are more important than others. And that's where the 49ers have it dialed in right now. They know exactly what they're looking for in each position from a mentality and a physicality standpoint. And not everybody in the league is at that point because they're still trying to figure out this, that, or the other. And you look at the handful of teams that do it right. Philly does it right. Green Bay does it right. Seattle does it right. The Niners do it right. I think New England's kind of trying, but, Kansas City does it right. They're not going to go out and reach for a guy that doesn't fit exactly what they're looking for, and that's why the Niners are so good.
Yeah, and then they're also marrying athletic ability and college production. So, like, if you're a super productive player and you have that athletic ability, you're on their radar. And so for whatever reason, because of the height, weight, and speed requirements and the preferences, the preferences of personnel guys around the league, sometimes really good football players just kind of sneak through. Johnny, great stuff, man. Always love listening to you when I'm driving around in the afternoons. You and Greg always do great stuff. What do you got planned for this week? I know you guys do a bunch of stuff in and around the draft. You'll be, I'm sure, in the conference room across from the draft on draft night, Thursday night. What is this week looking like?
Well, first of all, I have to give you all the credit in the world because I love working with everybody, but it was so fun sitting in that room with you because all I did was just kind of traffic cop it around. And I always knew that when I threw it to you, it was like, Crew's got this guy. Like, dude, it wouldn't matter if the guy was a 7th rounder from Slippery Rock. I mean, it was just like, dude, I know Krug knows this guy, and there was no hesitation. And you know this from working with guys. It's like, is this guy going to know, or is this guy prepared, or is this? I mean, this is your thing, man, and you're so good at it, and you're so prepared, and you were a scout, and you know what teams are looking for. You've been covering the Niners forever. You're completely dialed in. So it's awesome. But we're going to be down there on Thursday, and then we're going to be down there on Friday because you pointed this out. We debated back and forth. Well, hell, they don't have a pick on Thursday. Do we need to be down there? look, man, if they trade Trey Lance and they package a couple of threes, don't be surprised if you see that SF logo, coming up at the end of the first round, because that might be the case. That's the whole reason we're going down there. And then we're going to be down there on Friday because then, third round, obviously they got the 3 picks. So, I truly believe that we may be surprised into the first round, and they may have a pick on Thursday. It's the whole reason we're going down there. So Thursday and Friday, we down there.
Dude, always great to have you on, man. How's the kid doing, Johnny? But first of all, people don't know, John and I know each other well. I coached his kid when he was a little leaguer, and now his kid's a big college student, all grown up. We got college kids. How do you like year one of college?
Yeah, he's going to broadcast school at Arizona State. I'll make this quick and painless. And you've known him for, seriously, since we moved here in 2010. And you've coached him, and he loves you. And he doesn't care about me, but he really likes you. And you're an inspiration to him. And he's doing his first year of broadcast school. He joined a fraternity. Nobody at Arizona State wears clothes, men or women. So,
so he's loving it.
Yeah, I'm trying to live vicariously through him, but I don't want to be like a dirty old man. But he's been great. Thanks for asking. I appreciate it. Yeah,
Johnny, have a great night, man. Thanks for stopping by, and maybe we'll talk to you after the draft before training camp and get your thoughts on what they did.
It is my pleasure. It is always my pleasure. I got a YouTube channel as well. It's just
let's
John
promote
Lund.
it. Does it say it at the bottom of the screen right there? Obviously, it says KBR. No, John Lund Unleashed. Talk about your Locked On show, Johnny.
Yeah, it's the Locked On Network. The guys at KBR have been good enough to let me do something on the little solo project on the side so that I can get in a couple of 2-3 words edgewise. And it's Unleashed, John Lund, whatever you want to search for. And if you find it, subscribe. But you've built, I got to say this too. You have built an awesome following, and for very good reason. You got passion. You're smart. You've worked hard. You know what you're talking about. You're a lot of fun. I've known you for 13 years, and we used to live right across from each other. And I'm very happy for your success, because it is well deserved and well earned, and you'll work your ass off. It's awesome.
Thank you, brother. Say hi to your lovely bride. Say hi to your kid for me. Peace, love, and we'll see you in the springtime.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Krueger. I love you, man.
I love you too, bro. There you go. The great John Lund in the house. Go listen to him, man. Not everybody on the radio's good. Johnny is. That Greg guy he's working with ain't bad either. No, I'm just joking, Greg. I love you. Glass half full, guys. Could you guys see the 49ers using some of their picks to get veterans? We got that one answered. Billy Boy 49. Larry, you ever going to use that box of bounce behind your left shoulder? It's been sitting there since you launched the show. You know what? You're right. I put it up there. I think my idea was, you know what? It's probably going to be like air freshener. But I probably should carry it in the house and use it. How does bounce get stale? Because it's been there for a while. New Dawn Red October. Darnold is going to take us to 17-0. Bomber T. Rather have Richardson over Trey. That guy is a specimen. I do love Richardson. My God, he's just so crazy. Clarsard. Teams don't want to gamble on Trey. We don't want to gamble on his potential. Is why he won't get moved. Agreed. I think he is getting moved. I've said it a few times. Michael G says, I effing hate KMBR for getting rid of Larry. Oh, come on. Everybody does their own thing. The Car Gods. Larry can the Niners pick up Rodgers from the Jets after Green Bay deal all same time in the draft? I don't even know if I'd want Rodgers at this point. He's obviously awesome, but he's 40. We saw real regression last year. Michael Michio. It's not about the radio station. It's about the people, and Larry is my people. I like that. That's almost like a Monte Ellis. I'm a Warriors, and I'm always going to be a Warriors. KMBR definitely making some poor decisions. All right. Let's not bag on them. Good people over there. We got this one. Caesar says, love Greg and John on 90. I loved him and Papa on 95.7, the game. Oh, now you're going the older iteration. The Car God says, we miss you on the radio, Larry. Thank you. Niner Dads. Yes, good stuff, Larry. Been listening for a couple of decades now. Mark Hope says, I love you guys. Car God says, John is the man. Johnny's a pro, man. He's a pro. And, of course, you guys caught us on ESPN Radio together. Johnny is absolutely a pro. Longtime Niners fan. The Niners looked at a wide receiver from Adams State University. I had to look it up. It's located in Colorado. Love it when hidden gems are found from the slippery rocks of the world, like Jerry Rice. Seriously. You know me. I like that kind of stuff. Michael G. Larry, you're the best. Seriously. Oh, I'm not going to rip that guy. Let's move on. Joe Schmo says, I fill in on 95.7. Yes, I do. You can catch me there sometimes. Daniel says, Johnny Lund, little hands in the air. Joe Schmo says, Larry would have his stats. Mitchell and Ness says, air freshener for Larry's 420 moments. Thank you. Oh, yeah. There's none of that in the house. Come on. You got to know that. Joe Schmo, Larry. Oh, wait. There we go. I missed that one. I already read that one. Carsard, we are Krug Show fanboys. Lincoln says, Hayner ain't be as good as Purdy. I like the sentence structure. Bomber T, you're one awesome dude, Larry. Thank you. Thank you to everybody. All right, couple spots. We are brought to you by Pig in a Pickle. Check them out. Emeryville, Corte Madera. It looks a little bit like this.
We grew up with a Sunday dinner. That means no matter how busy you were, no matter where the hell you were, you came to dinner on a Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday dinner without sausage, it's like a church without God. You know, how can you go to church if you don't believe in God? You know, and along with the sausage also became the discussions. That was discussion night. You know, it wasn't a typical family that you sit there and you're quiet, you know, and you don't talk with a mouthful. Oh no, man. Italians talk when they're eating. Italians even talk when they're sleeping. And definitely we talk with our hands. So if we can't express it through our mouth, through our lips, we express it with our hands. So, and that's what sausage is, really. It's an expression, you know, that life is good.
All right, coming down the home stretch on the Krug Show. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to Johnny. Thanks to all of you in the chat. Big week on the channel. Obviously, the draft Thursday night. We got Warriors and Giants both going Wednesday night. We'll have a big Wednesday night postgame show. Tomorrow's a huge day. I'm down in Santa Clara covering John Lynch's press conference. I'll be releasing a bunch of stuff on YouTube throughout the morning and into the afternoon. Then join me in the afternoon on Grant Cohn's channel with Grant. Jesse Naylor joins me tomorrow night on the channel. We're going to be on with Vish this week. Should be good. Doing a bunch of stuff throughout the week. And, of course, we will live stream Thursday night, round 1 of the draft. We'll bring it back on Friday night with rounds 2 and 3. And if I can still talk, maybe we'll even do something over the weekend. You know we will, but I'm not sure if I can stream the whole thing. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to the sponsors. Thanks to New York Style Italian Sausage. Awesome company. Thanks to Telmetrics. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle. And then until tomorrow, we're out.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you won't get exactly what you asked for. Careful, whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need